there's not strong investor interest. And I find it odd because mining companies are making good money. But more importantly, I think this is a good time to get in when something's not so popular, but has a great fundamental future. And I believe that we're on the verge of a metals supercycle, and that we're really just getting going on it.
On this episode of Early Bird, Greg Beischer, CEO of Alaska Energy Metals Corporation. Greg joins the podcast today to talk about exploration and mining stocks in 2023, including why Greg thinks that a super cycle is coming to the industry soon. If you're an investor looking to stay on top of the latest market trends, then you're listening to the right podcast. This is Early Bird, and I'm your host, Stephen Lerner. Before we get to today's discussion, let me tell you how you can save time and beat the market through Early Bird, a free daily email newsletter featuring commentary about the latest trends in stocks, cryptocurrency, and equity crowdfunding. Early Bird is designed to help individual and non-professional investors stay on top of all of the critical investing trends. The newsletter is 100% free and is sent to your email box each weekday morning. Subscribe to Early Bird for free at www.earlybird.email. Once again, that's earlybird.email. And now, today's discussion. All right, Greg, welcome to the Early Bird podcast. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Very well, thank you.
Well, thanks for coming here, Greg. You are the CEO of the Alaska Energy Metals Corporation, which is a publicly traded company in the metals and mining space. And so today we're going to be talking about investing in mineral exploration and mining stocks in 2023. But before we get to that, Greg, in 30 seconds or less, what should the audience know about you and your background?
Well, sure. I'm a geologist, a mining engineering technologist, with close to 40 years under my belt, searching for metallic mineral deposits all over, but with specific focus on nickel. I'm a bit specialized in nickel geology and exploration.
Interesting. Good mix, good background there. Mining exploration or mineral exploration, mining stocks. How would you describe the current state of the industry right now in late 2023?
Well, it's interesting. The industry overall is doing well. Metal prices are reasonably high, yet there's not strong investor interest. And I find it odd because mining companies are making good money. But more importantly, I think this is a good time to get in when something's not so popular, but has a great fundamental future. And I believe that we're on the verge of a metals supercycle, and that we're really just getting going on it.
Interesting. Well, why do you think this space is not so popular with investors?
I'm not sure, especially amongst younger investors. There's lots of different speculative investments one could make, whether it's tech stocks or pharma, biotech, these things. And so there's lots of choices. But in the end, it really does come back to the raw materials. Everything around us came out of a mine in one form or another. And now with the advent of a switch to electrical vehicles and that sort of thing, much more electrical power, the only way to move those electrons around is metals. And so that's why I think this super cycle is imminent.
You mentioned EVs, electric vehicles, certainly a popular category of stocks for investors out there. A demand for EVs, though, seems to be down in the past year. Is it still a good catalyst for the mineral exploration and mining industry?
Oh, I believe so. I think the move is afoot now. Even if there's a slight lull here, I think about adoption of electric vehicles the same way I think of the history of the flat screen TV. At first they were quite expensive, and even though they were very attractive, uh, uh, people bought them, but after a while, there was enough adoption of the technology that they became quite popular, and then so could be mass produced at a bigger scale, and then the price accordingly came down, and now they're ubiquitous. Every TV is a flat screen TV. So I think the same thing will happen with electrical vehicles.
Interesting comparison between those types of television sets and the new class of vehicles, electric vehicles that we're seeing out on the road. Let's take a look at the broader mineral exploration and mining market. I wanted to do that by looking at the ETF, Spider S&P Metals and Mining ETF. It's been a solid, decent year for that ETF, which tracks the industry. It's up about 6% this year or so, which is so far pretty good here in September. But compared to the larger S&P index, which is up so far about 16% or so this year, it seems to be lagging behind the broader market. Why do you think this industry is lagging behind the rest of the market?
It puzzles me when the fundamentals are just so good that people wouldn't invest more rapidly. It is a volatile industry. Metal prices can take big swings, and so one has to be prepared for that, but prepared on the downside, but prepared on the upside too. And I just see this great wave building. I've lived at this point through at least 5 or 6 major cycles in the metals mining business. And when the prices start to move, and they can really move upwards quickly and for sustained periods. So that's why I always like to be a bit of a contrarian in my investing, and then try to invest when things are a little bit out of favor.
So let's talk about that. Why this might be a good time to get in the space as an investor for mineral exploration and mining stocks. As you stated, Greg, mining stocks are just so important to the economy. There's demand growing for many different types of metals, and they're used in so many different products. Why is this a good time in the second half of 2023 to invest in these types of companies?
Well, I really think it all comes down to electricity. If we truly are going to transition a major portion of our vehicles to electrical power, there's a lot more metal required in those vehicles, but it also means that you would have to rewire a lot of the cities. You need to be able to deliver that electricity to parking spaces, and not only that, but you have to generate more electricity and deliver it through transmission grids, which take a lot of copper. So I just see all metals, the demand for all metals increasing dramatically in the coming decades.
Oh, absolutely. I could see that being the case. But on the flip side, there are some risks with investing in this industry. There's a lot of volatility with certain types of metals and materials. There are political issues across the world that could make things incredibly complicated in this industry. What do you see as some of the risks right now and the headwinds in this space?
Yeah, the risks always are political, and but they could in some ways work in our favor as investors. For example, I think there's significant political risk, and I actually think our country's quite vulnerable right now to being cut off from certain metal supplies. We're really reliant on a lot of other countries for our metals. And some of those countries are not at all friendly towards us, and in some cases provide 100% of the imports that we have. So all it would take is some disruption from an argument between countries, and the next thing you know, we're in a world of trouble because we don't have that metal supply. And, I think to myself around the world of metal supply chains, and I know that China has been very, very aggressive in building its supply lines. It mines a lot of metal itself, but it has also established supplies of those metals from mines all over the world in the South Pacific and in Africa. And that metal goes to them, and they're not going to accept a diversion of that. So China has prepared themselves very well, where I don't think the United States has, and I think we're vulnerable and need to invest into mining in our own country so that there's a secure, stable domestic supply for our needs, particularly on an electric vehicle transition space.
Good point. When we return, we'll hear from Greg about what to look for in exploration and mining stocks and how new investors can get started with these companies. But first, let me tell you how you can become a more informed investor through Early Bird, a free daily email newsletter. Early Bird has commentary on the latest events and trends in stocks, cryptocurrency, and crowdfunding. With Early Bird's daily weekday email, investors can quickly stay on top of the trends and beat the market. Subscribe to Early Bird for free at www.earlybird.email. Once again, that's earlybird.email. And now, back to today's discussion. So, Greg, today we are talking about mineral exploration and mining stocks. I'm curious, let's say you're an investor and you are thinking about buying stocks in this space. What should investors look at when examining stocks that are involved in mineral exploration and mining?
Well, historically, mineral exploration stocks are highly speculative investments, and one should be careful about investing in any one stock. Do your due diligence, and you can subscribe to newsletters and whatnot that provide a screening and a better chance that the investment will be successful. But like tech startups and that sort of thing, mineral exploration is sort of that early stage R&D for a mine, and a lot of them in the end don't work out, but a lot of them do increase in price. Maybe they're not ultimately successful in discovering an ore body that becomes a mine, but at some place in a good market with good fundamentals and interesting discoveries, then one can realize really substantial profits. Like, it's not totally unusual to see 5 times or 10 times your investment on a successful mineral exploration company that makes a good discovery or advances a known deposit closer to being a mine. But a lot of them do fail, and so you have to screen those out. But sometimes the rewards are so good that one good success story can counteract 2 or 3 that didn't work for the investor.
So it's such an interesting space, mining stocks, because not every mining stock does the same thing. Your company, for example, I believe you focus more on like mining nickel. Is that correct?
Well, I would say we're more focused on exploring and developing a nickel deposit, and it's highly likely that if we're successful in the coming 2 years, that we would sell the deposit, the metal deposit, to a big mining company that has the wherewithal and expertise to build a very large mine. So our space is to discover and delineate valuable metallic deposits in the earth to dramatically increase value for shareholders, and then vend the deposit, hopefully at a great profit, to a major mining company. So there's an array. It goes from exploration to development and delineation of a deposit, and then finally to actually mining the deposit at a profit.
Is there a reason why your company is focused on nickel, for example? Obviously, there are many different types of minerals out there, metals that companies can mine. And when you look at the market, many companies that do different types of mining into different minerals. Why is there a reason why nickel is a focus for the company?
Oh, it sure is. Well, number one, I have a background and some expertise in searching for that particular metal, which not all geologists do. But I just see a timing issue here, a timing crunch coming. We've got car companies spending billions retooling their assembly lines to make electric vehicles, and they're building battery plants, and independent battery manufacturers are building battery plants, but they've realized they don't necessarily have the raw material supply to be sure they can build the batteries. And nickel is a very important component of the average electric car battery. In fact, there's around 60 pounds of nickel in every electric vehicle.
Wow.
And with batteries, I mean, they're called lithium ion batteries. But really, the major components are nickel and graphite. And so you can imagine that, and I will say another thing, nickel is a lot harder to find than is lithium, and for that matter, graphite. And so that's why I see the real crunch coming. I think that it's going to be the choke point for full adoption and a smooth transition to electric vehicles.
So that's why that material might be in demand. I'm just curious because, as I said earlier in the show, we looked at that ETF. It's up a few points so far this year, but I look at some of the major mining stocks in the market, Newmont, Barrick Gold, and they're all down by double digits right now for the year. What is happening in the mining industry? Is there some type of divide right now between stocks that are performing well and stocks that are struggling?
I just don't get it with the gold stocks. The three that you mentioned there, the three biggest gold mining companies in the world. Gold's trading close to $2,000 an ounce. So mining companies are quite profitable right now. Yet there seems to be no investor interest. The fundamentals of the company are good. They're making money, but no one's investing in them.
Do you think that might change in the next year?
Well, I think it has to. At some point, you can't ignore the money, the profits that they're making, and know that that's got to eventually translate to a higher share price. But I just see such demand, company, particularly for the metals that are related to electrical generation and storage and transmission. Mm-hmm. I think those are the metals that are going to really, really do well.
So, Greg, if you're an investor brand new to this space and you want to get involved, how would you recommend an investor get started?
Yeah, do a lot of reading, just like you would with any other sector in which you're investing, and look for the trends and look for the gaps, which is what I've done here with nickel. most of the investing I do personally is in the mining space because I have such a good understanding of it. But that's the best way, is to educate yourself, read up on it. But if you're already an investor that's interested in electric vehicles or solar panels, newer types of cleaner energy, cleaner energy generation, then you're already pretty well educated, because you'll know that every component of those things is made from metals from the ground.
Oh, wow. So it's a good way to sort of get started if you're already investing in that. Greg, thank you so much for coming on the Early Bird podcast and talking to us today about what investors should look at mineral exploration and mining stocks right now in the second half of 2023. Before we wrap up the podcast, I just have one final question for you, Greg, and it's the most important question for today's discussion. That question for you, Greg, is what did 18-year-old you think that you would be doing right now?
Well, that's a great question, and I never, ever would have imagined it. But when I was 18 years old, I went just by chance to a mining technology school. And my first summer job was up in the Arctic searching for, at the time, uranium. And it was a great, adventurous way to start this career. And it has been adventurous. Geologists get to see a lot of wild places, but now that I'm a senior geologist, I raise the financing to do what's usually pretty expensive work. So I never really would have imagined that I'd be the head of a mineral exploration company and raising money and helping investors become aware of the mining and minerals exploration space. It couldn't possibly have occurred to me when I was 18.
Nice. Thank you again to Greg Beischer for sharing your insights on exploration and mining stocks. And thank you to everyone for listening to today's discussion. We'll be back next week for another episode of Early Bird. Have a great day.